The other day, I reacted to a video that JP Uncut posted with Corey Minor and the Young Don discussing water baptism. And at a certain point in the video, the Young Don said something along the lines of, I have no way to verify if what you're saying about the Greek text is actually true. And I stopped to comment and say, there are a bunch of online resources that you could go to, even if you don't read Greek, even if you don't know the original languages, there's still ways that you can study and become acquainted with it and at least work around the text. So I wanted to take this video and highlight a few of them. I'm going to highlight three, and then I'm going to do a little shameless self-promotion and plug something that I've had available for a number of years that I think is a very helpful resource. So first up, we have here the Blue Letter Bible. This has been around for a long, long time. It's a great resource. Tons of stuff. Right now, I have this set to the web view. You can choose the mobile optimized view. And I suppose this would give you more of your phone or tablet experience. Everything's just in a single column. For our purposes, because I'm on a desktop, I want to view the desktop site. Now up here, this is where everything's going to live in this Search the Bible tab. You could search a verse, a word, or a topic. They have advanced options, a quick nav, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so right here, they have an example, John 3 and 16. Let's just click that and see what happens. Okay, so you click John 3 and 16, and it brings us right to the text. Now, we have it in context. We have all of the verses following, and if you scroll up, we have everything that comes before. Up here, the controls, this will take you, the single arrow will take you to the next chapter. The double arrow will bring you to the next book. Likewise, on the left side, this will bring you to the previous chapter and the previous book. You can copy. There's various copy options. You could click on Strong's, and it'll have the Strong's numbering keyed to the words. You could do red letter if you want the words of Christ in red. Now, here's my gripe with that. In John especially, there are times when it's difficult to discern whether it's John talking or it's Jesus talking. Meaning, is John quoting Jesus, or is he commenting on something that Jesus said or did? And it becomes a little difficult. If everything is in black, you can do the work for yourself. The things that are in red are somebody else's interpretation being spoon-fed to us. And I want people to realize that a lot of interpretation gets done before we even get to the text. I'm going to say that again. A lot of interpretation is done before we even get to the text. For example, the fact that you're reading it in translation, you're dealing with somebody's interpretation. Whether it's a single translator like N.T. Wright in his Kingdom New Testament, or it's a team of translators who produce the NIV or the KJV or the NASB, whatever the case may be, these are people who have worked through the text, they've interpreted it, and they've decided that this is the best way to render it into whatever language it is that we're reading. So that's interpretation. Then when we get something like red letters, these are certain people's view that this is Jesus talking in these passages. Also, section headings. We read section headings and they can color our understanding of a text. For example, in Luke 16, many Bibles are going to say the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Now, everybody doesn't believe that that's a parable. Some people believe that it's an example story. There's a difference. A parable is using fictional people, fictional characters, fictional things to get a point across. An example story could be using real people, real events as an example to get a point across. So if we come to the text thinking it's a parable, we're going to say, oh, well, hey, that's a parable. It's not necessarily the case. Even versification, which was added not until the 15th or 16th century, I think it was the 16th century, comes along to help us find where things are in the Bible, and it's a super helpful tool, but it can also color the way we break a text up. So for example, Genesis chapter 1 doesn't end at, what is it, verse 31, I believe? It really ends at chapter 2, verse 3. And most Bibles are going to make a note of this just in the way they format the text, but the versification could give you a false impression on where it ends. So just be aware that interpretation has already taken place before we come to the text. Try to rid yourself of as much of that as possible. So if you have the option to get rid of section headings, fantastic. If you have the option to get rid of red lettering, get rid of it. If you have the option to get rid of versification, do it. My ESV app on my phone, I take away the verse numberings because I just want to read it straight through. When Paul wrote a letter, he didn't write numbers. He probably didn't have the section breaks that we even put in when we put it in paragraph form. But whatever you can do to make the text as clean as possible, I recommend doing it. Rant over. All right, let's get back to this. So here, if we click on the tools, we have a bunch of things pop up. First and foremost is an interlinear. This is a great tool, a great resource. We have the Greek text here from the Textus Receptus. You know, some people might prefer to see a more modern text, better critical text. Doesn't matter. The Textus Receptus will do. It is the text that the King James was translated from, so it makes sense here. And when you click on the word here, it's tagged to the word there. So hutos is so. Gar is for. Agapesin is loved. Otheos is God, so on and so forth. So we see how that works. Now, if you notice over here, it parses it for you. So it tells us that gar is a conjunction. It tells us that theos is a noun. It's a nominative singular masculine. It tells us that hutos is an adverb, so on and so forth. If you want to hear how the word is pronounced and it'll read the Strong's number to you, click on this. I believe they use Erasmian pronunciation. Do with that what you will. But say I want to click on the Strong's number. I click on that and it'll bring up this page right here. So here we have the transliteration, theos, pronunciation, theos, part of speech, it's a masculine noun, root word, etymology, it gives us all of that. It gives us the different inflections of theos, how many times it's used in different parts of the Bible. So, you know, the noun, nominative, singular, masculine 239 times. Let's see. Here, noun, dative, plural, masculine 1 time. So on and so forth. Dictionary aids. We have Vine's Expository Dictionary. You could click on that, and then you get the Vine's definition. The TDNT reference, it doesn't pull up the actual text, but it gives you the reference. So I believe it's to the standalone volume, the 1 volume. Let me see. So the numbers before the comma represent the volume and the page number. The numbers after the comma are the page number in the abridged version. So if you're looking at the 10 volume set, this would be volume 3, page 65. If you're in the abridged, it would be on page 322. It would be nice if you could pull that up, but I guess they don't have access to that. And that's one of the things you're going to have to sacrifice using a free resource like this, is that most of the materials are going to be public domain materials, which means it's older stuff that's no longer under copyright. So that doesn't mean it's not useful information. It doesn't mean that you won't profit from it. Trust me, a lot of people before our era had plenty to say, did a lot of research, and in many ways, even without all these tools, or I should say, even with all these tools, we're nowhere near as learned as they were in previous ages. So they have an outline of biblical usage. Again, the Strong's definition. They have Thayer's Greek lexicon there. I love Thayer's. I know he caught flack for some stuff. I think he was accused of being a Unitarian or whatever. It's still a great lexicon. You could do a search on the Greek number. So let's say I want to switch that up. Let's go 2356 and see what that pulls up for us. Threskeia, right? Or from a derivative of thriskos. Same thing. There you go. And it'll tell us everywhere it's used. So it's used in the book of Acts once, Colossians once, James twice. Let's see where it's used in James. Here the passages pop up. So if any man among you seem to be religious and bridle not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is in vain. And here's our word, religion, thriskos, right? Pure religion, there's the word, and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widow in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. So I've ranted about this elsewhere. Religion's not a bad word, ladies and gentlemen. Religion is to be pure, it's to be undefiled, it's to take care of others. It's one of the great commandments. when they said, "What's the greatest commandment?" Jesus said, "Love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, soul, and strength. The second is like unto it. Love your neighbor as yourself." That's religion. That's pure religion. And we should strive to be as religious as possible. Again, rant over. So if we go back and look at some of the other resources that we have at our disposal, you have various translations here, all side by side. The CSB, I like the way they render it. I also like Robert Mounce's translation. They say, "For God loved the world this way." I believe Mounce says, "For this is how God loved the world," which in this way or how would be a better rendering for hutos, I think, than so. Because when you say, "For God so loved the world," you get a translation like the NLT, which said, "For God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten son," or his one and only son. Um, So I don't think that's the intention of hutos. I don't think it's so much. I think it's, this is how, this is the way. In this way, God loved the world. And he shows that love for the world by sending his son to die for it, so that whoever believes will not perish but have eternal life. You have cross references, correlating verses, and it shows it all down here for you. You have commentaries. Again, this is going to be mostly open source stuff or public domain stuff. This ESV Global Study Bible, there's a lot of good stuff in there. If we just look at the introduction to John, you see it gives you a timeline, it gives you the author date, recipients, theme and purpose, key themes. You get an outline of the book. They see it as being in 4 parts. The setting, a nice map just to get familiar with the area. And I've personally found maps to be helpful when you're reading Acts and you're reading Paul, and you could see just how Paul traveled and how much sense it made. When you don't understand the area, it's kind of, it doesn't make as much sense. But when you're like, "Oh, okay, well, he went from here to there. That's right next door. That makes perfect sense. Oh, he's on his way here. Makes perfect sense to stop off here. Oh, well, the Holy Spirit told him not to go there. Well, yeah, he's got to take a detour around it now, and that's how he ends up over here." So maps and things of that nature are very helpful. Then you have, here's a little chart on the work of the Trinity. Fantastic. A lot of good resources there. They have some dictionaries. Again, not the newest, most up to date, but doesn't mean that it's not full of good information. Miscellaneous stuff. Here's some maps and images, some Wordles. Probably not going to get too much use out of that stuff, but you never know. So, yeah, that's the Blue Letter Bible. This is comparable to Bible software. And for being free, you're getting a lot out of it. You could do some great study with this. You could dig deep into the scriptures. You can come away with a much better understanding than you had before you sat down with them. And let me just say this. If, let's say you're a physical book kind of person, you don't want to get on a computer, you don't want to do all of this. If you have a Bible with cross references, I would highly recommend searching every cross reference that is listed there. Because once you start comparing scripture with scripture, once you start seeing how the connections are made, it just opens your mind up to a whole new level of study, right? So if you want to sit down with just a physical Bible in your hand, sit down with a cup of coffee, read the text, but you want to do a little more than devotional reading, get into your cross references. You'll find it very, very illuminating. All right, next resource I want to highlight is the Step Bible. Now, I have this on my phone. The website has a lot more to offer than the phone app. So here we have the text, and you're going to see that every word pretty much is tagged. So all I have to do is hover over a word, and then it pops up above, and I can start reading the definition. So heaven is shamayim, and it's heaven, heavens, sky, visible heavens, as abode of the stars, as the visible universe, the sky, atmosphere, etc. Heaven as the abode of God. The Aramaic equivalent, shamayim, heaven, occurs 420 times in the ESV, so on and so forth. It gives you the parsing. It's a noun, common, plural, masculine, absolute, all of that good stuff. Now, if I click on it, then I get all of that same stuff over here to the right. Now, it tells us the word occurs 458 times. Well, if I click that, it should give me where this appears. And all of these pop up here. All of them pop up to the left. And again, here's the meaning. Now, what about related words? Well, the name, Shem. All right, let's click that. Here you have the meaning, and I could get all of the same stuff. Click on any of these, the verses will pop up. More related words. So it's helping you to work through the text and see how these things are related, where they appear in the Bible, and that's great. Now, if we go over to their resources tab, we're going to see they have all of these things. I will say this about the Step Bible. It's not the prettiest interface. It's kind of clunky looking. It looks very old school, and hopefully some developers and web designers will get together with these guys and make it more aesthetically pleasing. But still, the information at your fingertips is amazing. So here you have a harmony of the Gospels. This is basically a synopsis. And here's the event, and it's going to tell you. So down here, I have all of these different translations popping up, different Greek New Testaments, whatever. Let's get out of all of that. Let's just look at the ESV for the sake of this example. So here's the event, and here's where it appears in each gospel. Now, let's go to one where it appears in all four gospels, and there's not many that appear in all four gospels. But here we have some questions about John the Baptist. So you click on that. Here's the pericope in Matthew. Here it is in Mark. Here it is in Luke. Here it is in John. What about the feeding of the 5,000? Here you go. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Right? It has all of those. Again, the text is tagged. Click on that. Pops up. You go through all your word study stuff. This is a great, great resource. Now, if we bring it back to this, we have tables of all the miracles in the Bible. And you can click on that and you can see all of those. We have a New Testament letter structure. Now they get this from Bruce Ware's synopsis of the Pauline letters in Greek and English. That is a wonderful resource to have. If you can pick up a copy of that, I highly recommend it. I reviewed it many years ago. It's a Pauline synopsis where this guy does a lot of work in putting all of the same themes next to each other in Paul's letters. But for the purpose of this table, it's the structure of a New Testament letter. So you have the salutation, the thanksgiving, the blessing, the body opening, body closing, greeting, signature, and the closing benediction. And it has it in all of the letters, not just the Pauline letters. So you have it in James, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, Jude, and even Revelation. So that's a helpful resource to have at your disposal. Now, if we go back, Old Testament parallels, this is going to be a lot of stuff like Chronicles and Kings. Where 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel, and Chronicles, all of the things that overlap and have parallels. Skeptics, opponents of the Bible, they're very fond of saying, well, this happens here and that happens there. What about this discrepancy? If you want to see these discrepancies, alleged discrepancies side by side, you could just click on one of these, read it side by side, and then work through the text for yourself. But that's helpful to have. Let's run it back. Old Testament used in the New Testament. This, hands down, is one of the most helpful things that they could have done. This takes so much legwork out for you. Like it saves you so much time. Now, I wonder if they have the NASB. They do. So let me click the NASB, and I want to point something out here. Now, the NASB, it shows the original, which is Isaiah 7:14. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and she will name him Emmanuel. Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. Now, what do we notice here about this text? We notice that it's in small caps. And what does that mean? That means it's a quotation of the Old Testament. This is something that the NASB does that no other translation does, and I wish they all would, because then you wouldn't even need a chart like this. It would just be popped out in your face. This is one of the examples of somebody interpreting the text before we get to it that I find extremely helpful rather than harmful. They're not doing anything nefarious here. They're simply pointing out this is a quotation from the Old Testament, or if not a direct quotation, then a very strong allusion. And it's not just for prophecies, right? It's for any quotation. So I find that to be supremely helpful. And then you have other ones, names of God, places in the Bible. You could create your own notes, and they have all these reading plans. So all of that's good and well. Now, let's say I want to engage in some form of textual criticism. Just for the record, real textual criticism involves working with manuscripts. So you have to work with manuscripts and compare manuscripts to other manuscripts and note differences and divergences and things of that nature. But if you wanted to just look at different Greek versions of the New Testament or even the Old Testament, you can choose a few. So let me here let's grab the Tyndale House Greek New Testament, the Byzantine Greek New Testament, the Textus Receptus, and the Society of Biblical Literature Greek New Testament. Let me click OK. Now I want to look up a reference in I don't want the Old Testament. Yeah, let's go, whatever. Let's look at Luke 24. Okay, so if we look here, we're going to see that the placement of Ilton is different. So in the Tyndale House Greek New Testament, Ilton appears after the epitomonema. But in the Byzantine text, it appears before. Same with the Textus Receptus. With the SBL Greek New Testament, again, it appears after. So it's just a difference in word order, not a big deal. But why is that? Well, they're dealing with different manuscripts, different manuscript traditions, and the Tyndale House and the SBL, these are going to be newer versions of the Greek New Testament. So they have more manuscripts to work with, and they've determined that this is probably the most likely reading to have been original, right? Does it make a difference in interpretation? Absolutely not. But let's say we go to John chapter 1 and let's look down to verse 18. Now here we have monogenes hios, monogenes hios, monogenes hios, but the SBL goes with monogenes theos. So one is only begotten or one and only son, and that's Tyndale House chose that reading, along with the Byzantine and the Textus Receptus. But the SBL went with monogenes theos, the only begotten God or one of a kind God or unique God, however you want to translate monogenes. So as you're doing your reading, you can say, that's interesting. Let me look into that. And, start doing your Googling, and you could pop up articles where people are discussing the reasons for that. And you could do the same thing if you wanted to look at older versions or Greek versions of the Septuagint. They have here, I don't know, this Hebrew. Well, yeah, let's do that. Let's look at the Septuagint and let's look at the Hebrew. So this is the Leningrad Codex with pointed Masoretic text. It's like the BHS with morphology by Open Scriptures. So the BHS is the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. Oh, why can't I get to the Old Testament from there? I don't know. Let's go to the beginning. Here we go. All right, so let's try this again. We're going to go to Septuagint, and then we want to go to this one. All right, so the BHS is the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. This is the scholarly Greek or Hebrew Old Testament, Hebrew scriptures, and it comes with an apparatus. This is the text without the apparatus. But now let's say you want to see how the Septuagint translated the Hebrew. And this says Bereshit, this says Anarchy. And you say, oh, well, that's interesting. Why did they go with that? Well, Bereshit means in the beginning, the first, right? Chief, choice part. Well, Archi means beginning. extremely extremity, corner, attached chord, first place, headship, high estate, eminence, so on and so forth, authority, magistrate, ruler. And you can go through all of these and say, okay, that's an interesting translation of that term. You know, you can do that type of study. But for most people, um, they're probably not going to want to do that kind of study. It's just there in case you do want to do it. Now, I don't know if they have Latin on this one. I don't, they do have Latin. So that's fantastic. You have different Vulgates you can compare with that. So for me, Step Bible, again, with a more aesthetically pleasing interface, I think this would probably be for me, hands down, the best resource available. Blue Letter Bible might do a couple more things, but I just like how everything is tagged in this. I just like how easy it is. It's very easy, it's very intuitive. And the third resource I want to highlight, and this video is already at about a half an hour, so I'm going to go quickly. This is the German Bible Society website. Up here, I have it set to English. If you read German, you can set it to Deutsch. But now here's the BHS we were talking about. Here's that same Hebrew text, right? And you just have it here, no apparatus, no nothing. But if you want to read Hebrew, read Hebrew. You can run it back. Here's the NA28. This is the most up-to-date scholarly Greek New Testament. It is an eclectic text. It varies in different places from other eclectic texts, such as the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. But this is the standard. And again, there's no critical apparatus. There's no text critical notes here. But if you just want to read it in Greek, you have that option. They have the Luther Bible. This is in German. And they have the trusty King James Version. So, but let's say I want to look up something in the Greek New Testament, but I want to add something to it. So here we go, translations. Now I can make a diglot with this and the Biblia Sacra Vulgata, right? So the Biblia Sacra Vulgata is a Latin translation of the Bible. And now here I have the Greek and Latin side by side, and I can look at them together. And again, just like we were doing with the Step Bible, where you're comparing the Hebrew to the Greek, you can do that here. I like that it's side by side. In the Step Bible, with it being one over the other, again, aesthetically, not the most pleasing thing, right? But now let's go back and let's go to the Old Testament, and you can do the same thing. Add a translation. I still want to see it in the Biblia Sacra Vulgata. And let's add an English translation for kicks and giggles. We'll do the ESV. And here you go. So here we have the Hebrew original, the Latin translation, and an English translation of the Hebrew. Now, it would be nice if they had a translation of the Latin, and they might. I don't know if they have the Douay-Rheims on here. I don't think they do. They do not. But just a helpful way to do it. I like the fonts. I like the Hebrew fonts on here. I like the Greek fonts on here. So if we go back, I think these fonts are pleasing to the eye. If you want to make it bigger, you know, you could just increase your page size like that. I think up in advanced mode, you can change the font size. I already have it as large as it can get. You could change the font. I don't want to do that because I like how it is. But just one more resource. Do you need it along with the other two? You don't, because they have everything that this has. And in many ways, this is way more stripped down and doesn't have the features. But if you're looking just for a reading experience and you like to set up a diglot or triglot, for me, this is the best looking, right? Now, lastly, I'm going to plug my blog, Rightly Dividing the Word of Truth. Visit it when you get a chance. It's rdtwot.wordpress.com. I've had this thing since 2006. And many years ago, I can't even remember when, I created a page called Students Corner. I spent some time yesterday updating this, going through, fixing broken links, trying to track down some websites that had changed and gone elsewhere, deleting some websites that I can no longer find. And I still got a lot of work to do in updating it. But I have it categorized. We have ancient Near East resources. We have audio resources. So this will be like sermons or courses that you could listen to. We have um, the Old and New Testaments in Greek being read aloud. This one, Faith Comes by Hearing. This website is amazing. They have audio Bibles in so many languages. So many languages. Here we have biblical text, German Bible Society. That's where we just were. You have, the JPS, Hebrew, English, Tanakh, Septuagint Online, Text Critical Greek New Testament. So if we go to that, again, this is an older website. The interface is not great to look at, but there's a lot of information if you want to get into textual criticism. New Testament in the original Greek Byzantine text form. So this is the Robinson Pierpont Greek New Testament. Now, the aside from being the majority text and having something different than the normal critical text that you're going to encounter, this essay in the back by Maurice A. Robinson. I never know if it's Maurice or Morris, but I say Maurice A. Robinson. The Case for Byzantine Priority. This is a must read. Even if you end up disagreeing with his conclusions, the way he argues for Byzantine priority, it's masterful. So I highly recommend you check this out. Get out of that. If what do we have? The Aramaic Peshitta. So this is just the translation of the New Testament into Aramaic. Here's a Hebrew New Testament. We have apologetics websites. We have various Christian writings from all the way from the Apostolic Fathers up to the works of John Cardinal Henry Newman. We have extra non-biblical texts. We have grammars. Sadly, only one Hebrew grammar, but numerous Greek grammars. We have Jewish writings. These are rabbinic Jewish writings, various journals and articles. I haven't been able to go through all of these and make sure the links are working properly. So that needs to be looked at. We have some miscellaneous stuff. Let me highlight this right here. Abbreviations in theology and biblical studies. If you write, let's say you have a website or a blog and you like to write articles and you like to footnote things or do bibliographies or cross references, the Society of Biblical Literature Handbook of Style will give you the abbreviations for most scholarly material. This supplements that. The SBL handbook doesn't have everything. So the abbreviations in theology and biblical studies, it's just another resource to help supplement some of the stuff that's missing there. Bibliographies for theology, is that still active? It is. Wonderful resource. This is Brian Small's blog, Polimeros que Polytripos, and all things Hebrews can be found on this blog. And unlike many of us, he stayed blogging. Look at this, Wednesday, July 17th. That's yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. He's blogging up to the present day. I basically abandoned mine a number of years ago when I started working full time. St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. This is Scott Hahn's outfit. Non-Christian text. We have some Islamic texts like the Quran and Hadith. We have the Mormon scriptures. We have the Internet Sacred Text Archives. There you can find stuff like the Bhagavad Gita. You can find Buddhist text. You can find the Gnostic literature. You can find all kinds of stuff. We have various online books. We have stuff on epistemology, or I'm sorry, philosophy. We have all these research databases. Again, this is one that I'm going to have to go through everything and, update it. But these are mainly if you're searching for a doctoral dissertation or a master's thesis, this is where you're going to want to go to one of these sites. And then finally, we have things on textual criticism. So I created this page a number of years ago because the information's out there, the resources are out there, and if it aids somebody in coming to understand the scriptures better, if it helps them to grow in their knowledge and their relationship with God and to just become more mature in the faith, and I can help aid in that in some small way, that's why this is there. I pray that those who watch this video, you can come check this page out. You can make use of these resources, make use of the other ones I highlighted. The Blue Letter Bible, the Step Bible, or even the German Bible Society website. And there's a number of other resources out there. There's Bible Gateway, of course, which has every translation known to man. They have some other resources that are locked behind a paywall. You have the Olive Tree Bible software. They have a free version that you could download for your mobile device, your desktop. They have it for Windows or Mac. What else is out there? Logos has a free version. I would highly recommend grabbing. I can't show that because I have Logos and I'm signed in, so there's no way for me to access a free version. It would just take you to my already paid version. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other resources out there that I don't even know about. So my point is there's all these free resources out here at our fingertips. You don't have to invest in Logos or Accordance to do good Bible study. Now, if you have the money and you can invest in those, I highly recommend them. They're great resources. They're very up to date. They're fast. There's a lot of material. There's tutorials online. There's all types of stuff. But if you're on a budget and you just want to dig a little deeper, you got all of this information right at your fingertips. So with that said, I hope you found this video useful. I pray that you're able to make use of some of these resources. And until the next time, God bless.